Welcome everyone, and especially welcome to Azille. Azille and I she did her postdoc with me for the last 2 years. So we had these conversations once a week for about 2 years. So hence my decision, or our decision, to give this colloquium a bit of a different structure. That she doesn't speak all the time, and that I certainly don't. Hello, Kupanu. That there's more of a conversation, and that the conversation is not simply a repetition of the various conversations that we've had. We've shared the link to our conversation on LitNet. We've also done a launch at Welgevallen Clinic where our clinical students live. So this is really, I hope, an opportunity for us to get other people to ask questions. I'm very thrilled. I have many questions. We won't get to all of them, but I also want to focus on people who are here. And I'm very interested in having people from different generations, different cultural contexts, to ask questions so that we can really interrogate your work. I have to say, Azille, people do not feel neutral about your book. So
Never do.
I have some people who wrote their comments with big enthusiasm and eagerness, and like, can we join the struggle? And then others who rolled their eyes, were irritated and frustrated, and saying, what's new under the sun? So we have a whole range of questions, and I hope we can get to them all. But we did think, just to put us all on the same page, Azille will just give an introduction to the book for about 5 minutes, and then we'll get to the questions.
Okay, thanks everyone for being here. I really appreciate it so much. And thank you, Lou-Marié, for just being with me all the way with this project and all this ongoing support. And I feel so held by you in a way, and it's so special and so valuable for me, so thank you. Okay, short overview of the book. So the work started for me with a question that I think so many of us are asking if you are white and Afrikaans, but I think also other white people in this country are asking, why haven't we changed more yet? So it's 30 years after the ending of apartheid, and one would have thought that our lives are looking much differently to what they are already. Our neighborhoods are still very segregated. We still live in like these little pockets of privilege, separate from other people in the country. We still only speak our own languages. All of that. Of course, there are people who manage to do it better, but many of us don't. Even in spite of our conscious intentions to be better. I mean, so many of us, we feel we really want to integrate into this country in a more full and authentic way. We want to live our lives differently, but somehow it's not happening. And I'm asking, so it started for me with asking why. Where are we getting stuck? My friend and colleague Karina, sitting here, asked so nicely in her work, what is arresting our presence? Why are we stuck like this? And then at the same time, the other thing that is driving this work is within this separate little privileged white Afrikaner life that I'm living, I do experience it as extremely stifling and claustrophobic and oppressive as a woman. And especially as a woman who is, I'm not getting married, I am not having children, I feel very queer many days. So in so many ways, I'm not living and there's no script for me. I feel very alienated in my culture. If you pick up an Afrikaans book, except the nice radical feminist authors, but the popular culture, the TV, the music, all of it is directed at the white Afrikaner love plot and motherhood. If you're a woman You are primed for motherhood as your primary and most full identity, and it's very difficult to find language and vocabulary and ways of being outside of these molds. So what this book has been for me is to actually figure out the connections between these things, so to start seeing how this very strict familial politics, the compulsory heterosexuality, compulsory motherhood, reproductivity, monogamy, the nuclear family building is connected to all of the ways in which we in our culture and society stay separate. And to start making those connections, you have to go back into our history, where you can really see how Afrikaner identity making and the settler place making that our people have been doing is so connected to a familial politics. Because you must think, if you want to create a pure white people, you have to make sure that the white women are having white babies. And if you want to connect that bloodline, and all of these are concepts that I do problematize in the book, but if you want to connect that bloodline to the land, it helps a lot, because then you can say it's kind of a God-given inheritance of land. If it moves from father to son in a line, it's in Afrikaans we say eersgeboortereg. I think it's a rule of primogeniture or something like that. So it's also a way that the family line is a way of connecting us to the land in some way that feels God-given and feels necessary. And so that's why in my culture, in our past, you are not only a mother, but you are the mother of the nation. So you mother not only your own babies, but the work you are doing is cultural work of creating new little white Afrikaans citizens. So all of this, so if you go look at our history, it's really a familial politics that through which it's the story we tell about ourselves, how we are white, how we are who we are. And this is the story that we keep telling. If you switch on the television, you look at it's these stories about brothers and fathers and land that must be passed over. So there's a love interest, and she's just there so she can have the baby. And these are the stories that we pass on in our culture. And these are the stories, I argue, that keep us white and apart. Also, if your focus is your little white family, then you will also move into, it's an individualizing logic. As soon as you think in terms of the unit of the little white family, you think, I only have to care, I must make sure my family is okay, and people who are like them. Maybe also the bigger family tree. It's a privatizing logic. It takes you out of bigger communities. So in any case, and the woman plays a crucial role in this, because she's the one who must be having the white babies, right? If the men can kind of do what they want, but if the women either turn to black men and don't have the white little babies anymore, the nation is gone. If the women turn to other women or queer people and not having those little babies, then the line is lost. The line of the land that gets passed from father to son, the whole project is lost. So in this book, I asked then, what happens if I, as white Afrikaner woman, starts refusing or contesting the script that is handed to me? If I start forging belonging or collectivity, contributing to communities, socialities, intimacies, collectivities that are broader than the white nuclear family. If I start building my life around connections that have nothing to do with land ownership, with property, that does not revolve around a white man, what kind of lives open up for me? What possibilities for my whiteness, for my being here, for my being in this place with other people, what opens up, what becomes possible? And that is what I'm exploring in the book in all kinds of ways. Don't know if that was 5 minutes, maybe 10, but...
Well, thank you. And I realize that I still have many questions to ask you, but I won't now, because we have really wonderful questions from the audience. And I don't know exactly how I'm going to do this, because I have questions that are printed out, but I'm also going to want to focus on people who are here and getting responses from people Yeah. I think, Dale, you said that you have a question that follows right from what I asked first on LitNet. Why are we interested in wit meisie trane? Why do we care about white Afrikaans women? But you want to put a different spin on that.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Azille, for being here. And I attended your book launch that you did last year, and I was quite struck by the conversation there. And you went into a lot of depth and detail about what the book covers. And I was quite, and even as you spoke about some of the more sort of prominent themes that the book speaks about now, I was quite struck by this sort of ideological dilemma that white Afrikaans women are faced with. Because it is a dilemma. It's a crisis around this identity. Who do white women turn to? Where do they turn to? If white men are too parochial or restrictive in their masculinity to see white women as more than just producing white babies, then what happens to white women? And so I guess I'm asking about that, but precisely what Lou-Marié said. I guess why is research about whiteness, white femininity, white Afrikaans femininity important in post-apartheid South Africa, post-1994? I think research about whiteness is very important, but so I almost get the sense that whenever scholars write about whiteness, they kind of fail to write about its relevance for South Africa post-1994, and to situate it in that context. So, just to get some of your thoughts.
Thank you so much for those questions, and thanks for being here again. I love how you say that being a white Afrikaner woman is an ideological dilemma, because it is, because we are so nested in all of the privilege that we can have if we just perform this identity nicely, and then we have it all. And if we fail to do that, where do we turn and how? And that's a difficult thing, because white women our culture sets us up really badly positioned for feminist and queer solidarity, because our identities hinge on this idea of motherhood, and wifehood, which is directly in relation to the white man. So and you can see in our history, feminist solidarity comes really difficult for white Afrikaans women, because in the end, you can have your friends and your female friends and queer friends, you can care about them, but in the end, you pivot around the white man, and that's the ultimate relationship that you must take care of, also for your own well-being, because the difference is landlessness, basically. If you're with him, you are so fine. If you're not with him anymore, you have to figure something out. And maybe you have a good career and you're fine, but maybe not. So that is a real dilemma. And where do we turn? That's part, for me, of why I was writing this book. Where do I turn? And I think in the end, it comes down to feminist and queer solidarity. And it's something that we have to be able to start building. And I think the difficult thing there is that, as Sarah Ahmed says, it doesn't exist already. These things are feminist and queer solidarity with other, and especially not just with other white women, with black women specifically, because that is how we get to change who we are. And now there's that question of putting this responsibility on black women again now, but these are difficult questions. But the point is, feminist solidarity doesn't exist. It's not there just for us to pick up. It's something that we must create. How does it become possible? It becomes possible when we are willing to put ourselves, to be inconvenienced in our lives and inconvenience others, to say, I'm stepping away from this nice little role that you want me to play, and it's going to be hard for me and it's going to be hard for you, but then let's see what happens. And I'm going to work towards, I'm going to join projects, join conversations about changing the world that we are in, and through that work, solidarity with other kinds of people becomes possible. So it's not just about phoning my black friend and say, hey, now we're allies. It's about doing work that puts us in the same kind of struggle, and that is where solidarity starts growing. It's easier said than done, and it's something that is very difficult, but I really believe that's the starting point. And then the second question where you asked about why write about whiteness, how is it important, why is it important, how important is it? Again, I don't think, and I've said this before, and I think I'll say it every time, it's definitely not the most important thing. There are many other more important questions that should be researched and should be spoken about. But for us who are white, it's the question of how should one live? What must I do when I wake up in the morning? Where must I go? Who should I? So the question of whiteness, I think, today in South Africa, if you're a white person, well, probably everywhere, but for me, from where I am, it's the question of how should I live? And that is, for me, that's a very important question. Also, if we want to change the world that we are in, it doesn't help that everyone else is changing, but not the white people. So I also believe that for us, changing who we are it is more important broadly also for the project of changing the shape of the world that extends beyond our lives, specific lives as white people. So, yeah, not very clear-cut answers, but I hope I'm disentangling some threads that could be productive.
I sit now with the dilemma that I know many questions that I have and that follow right onto what you want there. I think one of the major strands is, okay, but how do we do this? And I think, Anna, you ask, will your book change anything? What does it help to gaze at yourself and see what is wrong? Does it change things? That's a bigger theme. But many people have asked about how to change it. Now, there are interesting questions about schools, religion. There was a question about what can white men do. But I want to open it so I can structure it in a way, but I think I want to open it to the audience just so that I can see what questions are here right now. Questions? Will you say your name, please?
I'm Kaiser. Thank you so much for the opportunity to ask a question. I know there's a lot. So basically, from what I'm hearing, family lines and connection is a big base of what we're talking about. So I imagine the solution as being sort of the converse, so sort of forming new familial lines, new connections. And so I kind of wonder, what sort of things are Afrikaner women, as you described, willing to do for their families, for their Afrikaner nationalism, for their solidarity, that Afrikaner women should be willing to do in pursuit of this, as you call it, feminist solidarity? So how, based on what you already see, that Afrikaner women are willing to put on the line for their families, for their blood bonds, what would you imagine the opposite?
Thank you so much. Such a nice question. So what white Afrikaner women are so good at doing is caring. We care. It's care labor, and we are strong at it. We can care beyond, we can put our bodies on the line for our families, for our husbands, for our children. We've done it historically. We've walked over the mountains bare feet. We've done it all. We are willing to
still think that one is a myth, but anyway.
the proverbial bare feet over the mountain. We can do all of it. And these are good. And I like what you're asking, because it's not about saying that caring for those you care for is bad. It's the best thing one can do, is to be good at caring, and to be good at keeping people together and at making sure things stay intact. But then I think the answer would be is to ask ourselves, who do we care for? Who else can we care for? Where can our care extend, and how does it change what care is necessary? So I think it's not about saying we are wrong and family is wrong. It's about saying, how can we open up these systems through which we take care of people around us, through which we make sure people are okay? How do we extend that into, and there the thing is, importantly, I'm not saying family is bad or family is wrong in the book. I'm saying if family is the main organizing principle, ordering principle around which we see our identity and around which we distribute our care, then we make our worlds very, very small and very apart, and that's why it's staying white. So the question is about, or for me, it is about starting to do the things we do so well, but in terms of a logic that doesn't only say care only for your own, care only for your own blood, care only for those who are part of your family or like your family. Start caring for, and that is, again, it's the age-old thing, but we saw it so clearly with COVID, that thing of that you can just care for your own and that'll make sure you're okay is not true, because in the end we are dependent on our broader communities, and that's something the white Afrikaner is really bad at. The white Afrikaner is good at building the walls of closing down, of saying we'll take care of ourselves. We see it again now with the AfriForum rhetoric at the moment, and for me the question is, what if we don't build those walls? What if we work in terms of different kinds of networks, start doing that work in terms of different kinds of socialities, intimacies, and so. I hope that answers it.
So there are very important questions that I want to get to. There's one about schools and about Afrikaans, the language. There's one about religion. Kupana, you had one about sex and how that can change things.
Well, I quote you so often about sex in the book, so it's fitting that you speak up.
You cite an old thing that I wrote about normal sex. I not quite regret using that word normal, but I said was, as a society, and this is what 6 years after the change into the new democracy that we should encourage as university teachers, everybody who can do that, encourage young white people and black people to have interracial sex, normal interracial sex at the first opportunity, as a part of sex education, just to get rid of this race. Of course, I was reading Fanon and using courses that you mentioned and the rest. So I don't quite regret the word normal, but I would use a different word. And you seem to have cited approvingly or something, not critically. But sex, reading your book again and again, last night I was reading again, what kind of sex is free? Is it, you mentioned in the last part, the third part of the fourth part, is it kissing your nipple, taking your nipple in your mouth? Is it orgies? What kind of sex are you thinking would liberate us? I have lost faith in sex. This is where I am. For all sorts of reasons. But also because of AfriForum, Trump, and everything. But sex is great. But in your case, because you write quite a lot, could you give us a description of this kind of sexual life, if not sexual acts, that would free us?
And if she's done, we're going to ask you to answer that question.
Tell us about free sex, Kupano. Yeah, I think that's a very difficult question, because the question also of free and unfree with sex is so not only complicated, but also potentially it can go in very problematic directions very easily. I think there I will go, take a cop out here and refer to Amia Srinivasan's work that I really think she starts answering this well. So she says, we think of sex as this thing that is just this true thing inside of us, and it's a true reflection of who you are. What you want is some kind of true reflection of who you are outside of politics, outside of other things. But she says that isn't the case. What we want sexually we've been socialized into all kinds of desires in all kinds of ways. What we want sexually is always already political, so that you are not exercising free sex when you just because you're doing what you want to do does not mean you're being free in that moment. It can still mean that you're doing it because you've been taught that's what you do. So she says, this idea that just because you feel it in your body and you really desire it in your body doesn't mean it's free. It's an empowered expression of who you are. But on the other hand, there is something about sex that escapes our direct control in a way. So there is sometimes desire does run away with you in ways that you don't expect, in ways that you didn't plan, that you thought you didn't want. You have that moment with someone and you're like, okay, I didn't know this, I go this way or whatever, and then it's happening. So at the same time there are, and that's the power, and also I think where many of the psychoanalysts find the potential world-making power of sex as something that can override many things that it is actually conditioned to keep in place. So there's that double thing of sex can feel free, but it isn't, or it can feel like you're trying something new that's not completely free, but that's... So I think maybe the question is not to ask about freedom, but to get out of that dichotomy between free and unfree, and rather to ask, why do I want what I want? What do I want, and why do I want it? And who am I when I get what I want, when I go for what I want? And who else can I be? And what is there that I might want? Or what is it that I'm not? So I think it's, yeah, I would take it there, is to question. And so then I would say, for me, if I must describe a sex act. Okay. Sure. Do you want to answer your question, as Lou-Marié suggested?
The part you didn't answer was, I was talking I had a double sense of freeing this, a freeing sex, right? A freeing desire, particularly in a place like this, or which is our home, South Africa, or anywhere else. So not just sex that's free, in the personal level, but sex that makes it possible to see other kinds of possibilities, that makes, I guess, close to this. I think you might have it in several places in your book. That gets close to other worlds. I'm trying to find another word. Other worlds that don't exist already. So a free sex and free sex are two overlapping with different things. And as I said, even when you can have, as to one side, even if I have a freedom in sexual life, I have managed to trouble my inhibitions. I do BDSM, I do all kinds of things, public sex like John Legend or something. I really thought, what the poets, Elrich Lever, Imam Mary Baraka, or Fanon, even if you can read them, however free you are as an individual, you can still have a world that's unchanged. So you can be free at a subjective level, you can decolonize, if you will, at a subjective level. The world continues as that's the problem. That's the thing I'm sitting with. I don't have as much faith now than what we do now. But I am open to be convinced, and seem to be doing that what we do in our personal lives will help change our society. But I was thinking, just one last thing. Last night I spent time reading about the cyanobacteria. You know what the cyanobacteria is?
No.
The cyanobacteria is the bacteria that make us it's possible for humans to exist on this planet. Right? But it is capable of photosynthesizing. But it took millions of this organism to do this. So even if the possibility right there is, if you are a cyanobacteria, you live for a week, you die, they can imagine thinking, what's the purpose? I mean, what am I doing? But over a million years, you're making it possible for multicellular organisms, millions, literally millions. We call it sometimes green algae things that has been taken up by chloroplasts. So even if what you do in your personal life is freeing things, there's a possibility, perhaps, if more and more of us in 100 years, which is too long for some of us, 200 years, that this place might change. This is what even if you don't see what you do as transformative, maybe in 100 years it might be possible to transform.
Can I respond to that again?
Yeah. I do want to give members of the audience still questions, and questions are still coming in as we are talking.
I hear them popping.
Yeah.
Okay, but just quickly, Kopana, I was thinking so much about that tension between the personal and the structural. And I mean, of course, nothing changes. I can sleep with whoever I want, still my world can stay exactly the same, as you say. So there also, I looked at there's a Marxist feminist Shulamith Firestone, who said I think in the 80s, she was saying, we cannot, it's also not about personal responsibility. I'm not trying to tell white women that they must go out and have different kinds of sex. I think that for me, the question is really, how do we start changing the structure of our society so that the sex that we are having can mean different things, and the things that we want. Like, I've never been taught, like, I didn't even know to ask what I want sexually until a few years ago, because our society, the white Afrikaans society, sets you up for one kind of sex, and that's with a white man, and that's all you believe sex is for. And that that is how whiteness is built in our culture. So it's this question of changing, all of it is also about working with people of all races. It's like doing the work of changing the structure of society so that me choosing to have sex with a white man is not the immediate way to owning land and being okay financially. In a way, it's like to start changing so that we can want different things, and that the things we want sexually, can have new meaning also. So it is, but I know I'm not talking myself out of it here, but I am really thinking about that tension also, and I do understand that it's not just about getting another sexual partner, it's about changing the shape of our world and the pathways of desire that are obvious or not obvious, or yes. So I hope it gets me closer to...
I have many questions about how to change things, looking at school, looking at religion, looking at other things. But I want to hear, I saw a hand. Yeah.
I had actually just one question, and now I have two. I think, well, the first one is a comment. I think perhaps for me, to also link to what Kopana said, the difference is more subtle in that perhaps it's not about having free sex, but challenging yourself as a white Afrikaans woman to desire differently, to go beyond what you think you're supposed to desire and sit with the discomfort of perhaps desiring outside of the box. I think for me that it's not so much in the doing, but in the thinking, and in how you think about engaging with other people and the possibilities that other people hold for engagement. Earlier, I was just going to ask about care labor and how you think about care labor in terms of the wider South African context, because of course I think we can make the argument that black women do more care labor than white women. Not that we necessarily have to compare, but it strikes me that that is often a compulsory kind of labor or care, and that white Afrikaans women or white women more broadly have the privilege of choice, and that also means choosing who to care for. So I'd like for you to comment on that, if you don't mind. I like the thing about choosing who to care for, but what was missing for me in that comment was addressing the wider context and thinking about the ways in which Black women perform care. Perhaps you can speak to that.
Yeah, of course. And we, if you are with a white man, and you can be set up in ways very easily that you can just outsource a lot of the care that you're supposed to do. And yeah, so absolutely, it is an unequal playing field. And also, why should only women be caring? So that's a whole, I agree with you, it's a whole Pandora's box there of what we can talk about. I think it is about, I was thinking of all the energy and all the time and all the things we put into as white women. And I have many friends who have children, and I move in circles where you see this play out in front of you. The kind of, time and effort and work and money that goes into caring for that little white child and that husband. And so I am not sure, I think also as white women, we mustn't go out into broader society and say, I'm going to help everyone else. Obviously, there's something wrong with that. But it's a question for me of investing that kind of time, that kind of energy, that kind of labor into collectivities that are bigger than your husband and your own little child and his 3 friends in their private school or whatever. It's about making ourselves available and useful in broader networks. And that's not about not caring for your own child. It's about saying the work I do to make my child okay is also work I do with other people in a broader community, thinking about how are all of our children going to be more okay. So that kind of, and if you don't have children, it's the kind of work moving into circles and asking how can I contribute my time and energy to something that makes all of us more okay, rather than just my little group or whatever. So it's that, and I agree with you that care maybe is loaded there. So if we think about it maybe in terms of strength and time and energy in whatever form that can take, that works better. So thanks for that, yeah.
I have many comments that I think will speak to what you're saying, but I first want to hear the audience, because these questions we can answer later also in writing. More questions from the audience. Karina.
Thanks, Azille. It's so lovely to be here and to listen to you speaking. So I've got a couple of questions and you can answer selectively.
Okay, thanks.
First of all, I would know what has been difficult for you as, and we're more or less the same generation, and maybe with somewhat different upbringings, but with a different understanding of desire, intersectionality, queer relationships to our parents, right? So on the assumption that you already had that first decolonial move intact, right? What has been difficult for you in thinking about exercising, writing about, living decolonized desire as you theorize it?
Second, please.
It's not an easy one, actually. I've been thinking a lot about class, right? So, to me, speaking very honestly, that would be the difficult axis on which you decolonize. And to desire in a way that is intersectionally inclusive of class. And how do you think about that?
Oof. Is there a third one? Okay. Class is very difficult, and I think I try to think class, at least, I try to discipline myself throughout the book to really also not forget, because I speak from a very privileged place, and I'm always aware of it, and there's no way of escaping that. Again, I would say it's about changing structures so that, and this is where if you start reading the family abolition work, that there should be stronger state support for people, so that you are not, whether you are okay financially or not, should not depend on who your parents are, who you're sleeping with, or who you get married to. Like that there should be a level at which people are okay. And here the Marxist feminists and the family abolitionists are thinking really in terms of kind of communal kitchens, like large-scale transformation of society, so that you don't have to, so that desire for the white man is not the easiest way to be like materially okay in your life. So there it is. So I really try to think also of, it is absolutely about class, because the thing, and this is the story of the white Afrikaner woman from the beginning, through the story of apartheid, white nationalism required of her to give up her gendered agency, but in exchange for that, she gets to, and this is Chrissy van der West's her language, she gets to sit pretty with a white man, with all of the privilege that goes along with that. So it is also really a question of transforming the class structures of society so that, and of course, my book can't do this, I can't do this, but this is the direction in which I'm thinking when I'm thinking about let's think broader than the nuclear family and let's take our desires in other directions, build lives with people. And also, of course, there's the argument, my friend Fasti is in the audience and she's thinking about this a lot, about living together with more people. It's also, so as soon as you start thinking outside of the box of the nuclear family, you can start spreading resources with bigger groups of people. So it is also about changing the kind of classed patterns of white Afrikaner living, I would say. Should I go for the second question, or are we taking another one?
Are you avoiding the second question?
Okay, the biggest, most difficult thing for me, Karina, in trying to practice what I am trying to preach in the book is all of these tensions, is how stuck I am in patterns in my life, in places in my own life, in how scared I am of real change, how, and also asking myself, why do I want to, so it's that thing of battling myself in terms of how much can I change, how much do I, and it's really about transforming or thinking about yourself in new ways, and that's also difficult. But so I started in therapy this year, actually properly, and so I'm also really on a personal level working through things, and it has been extremely complicated for me to confront in this whole process, to confront what it is that I want and what I'm willing to also to give of myself in, but that's the exciting thing of desire, is you can think about it a lot, and it really does change you. And so that's where it's not a very satisfactory answer, but I'm working on it. I'll say on me. I'm working on me also, and
Okay. Other questions? Again, I have many here that I wondered about questions from younger.
I'm curious to know what that cis heteronormative white Afrikaans men have to say about people. I mean, not cis heteronormative white Afrikaans.
I couldn't hear.
What are their thoughts around this?
Dal is asking, what are the white men thinking, white Afrikaner men thinking about the book? What are they saying?
Well, we have a few.
Easy answer is most of them don't read it. Yeah.
Well, we have a few white men in the audience, Louis and Desmond. Desmond is not paying attention.
Desmond has zoned out.
But Louis, do you want, because you asked about that.
I haven't read the full book, so I'm qualified to deliver an opinion on it.
So, Dale, that is the short answer. Most of them don't read the book.
Be careful what you wish for.
But there are a few who do, and I've actually had very beautiful responses from some white Afrikaner men who I haven't even expected it from, and they said they can see these things. But now, of course, the problem is also because I'm writing from my own body, so my book is focused on how we as white Afrikaner women can change how we are, and I'm not really telling the men what they should do. And so I've also had responses where guys would come up to me and say, yeah, I really think it's time that you guys change these things about yourselves. And I would be like, oh. So, yeah, it's a struggle. But some of them have been great, and I know a few really amazing white Afrikaner men who are doing the work, and they're in the minority, but they are there. And when they do the work, because they do have amazing things to offer in the world around them. If they just do the work, they can be great. So I don't hate them at all. If that's also a question I get, but no, I don't hate them.
Okay, more questions? I can go to. What is it? I think, Louis, your question was what? Do you want to ask your question?
Yeah. So what role does a white Afrikaner man have to play in? Maybe not more. I'm talking about the conversation like this, the debate like this. Since it's very difficult for me to say something, being afraid to impose my opinion on it, but also wanting to be able to enter a conversation like this. So I feel it's a difficult question. I want to know what you think is the right stance. What can a white Afrikaner man contribute to a discussion like this?
Well, it's great that you are here to begin with. Again, it's a room. Yeah, there are some men. There are some men here. I can give many of them. But often in these rooms, the men are nowhere, and the men are not. So I think as a beginning is to really open yourself up to the world around you and to the conversations that other people are having, and to make yourself available in those spaces in a way that's not imposing your own expectations on it. But of course, this is also work that you guys must do. You must ask, what can we really do? And as I'm asking in this book, what can I do? So, but I think a start is to be in rooms like this, where conversations are had about how we can dismantle your power. Like, you must also be in those rooms and say, yes, that could work, maybe, let's try it. So, yeah.
Okay, we are going to be colonized by the entire honors class just now. So we have, Brandon, we have about 10 minutes. Okay, more questions from Anne.
Seem to assume or focus on the femininity desire of the white woman. But I'd like to know, are women from other cultural groups in South Africa, are their desires and femininity less politicized? And if that is the case, what can the white Afrikaans women learn from those other women in South Africa who are doing more?
Absolutely. Everyone's desire is political and politicized and has political meaning. And I am writing about white Afrikaner women because that's where I'm writing from. But we can absolutely, and that's also what I try to do in the book throughout, we can absolutely learn from women of other races in this country